Hello and welcome. My name is Ian Jean, and my goal is to provide you with a better understanding of the rhetorical device juxtaposition by the end of this video. Juxtaposition is a literary technique in which two or more objects are placed side by side for the purpose of developing contrast or comparison. Before my research, I'd always believed that juxtaposition had to involve contrast, but I've learned that it's not simply limited to providing stark contrast. The etymology of this word derives from the Latin word juxta, which means near, and the English word for position. Literally, this would mean near position, a definition that perfectly goes along with placing side by side. Writers employ juxtaposition in order to surprise their readers and evoke their interest by developing a relationship between two ideas that would normally be seen separately out of context. I find that the use of juxtaposition can be novel and thought-provoking because the author stimulates me to make connections that seem strange but logical within the context of the literature. The comparison thus drawn adds vividness to a given image and provides a logical connection between two concepts. It also helps with creating suspense or making a rhetorical effect, the latter of which can be loosely interpreted to say, fitting the purpose of the author. Now, let's look at some real examples of juxtaposition that I totally did not find on Google image search. On the left, when I first saw this picture, I had a double take because, at first glance, the two headlines seem like they're related. The awkward positioning of the two headlines creates the effect of wrongly linking two topics that were intended to be separate. Had this juxtaposition been intentional, this would definitely be an example of a twisted sense of humor. On the right, the photographer places in the foreground a black and white photo of a train station and sets what looks like the rest of the train station in the background. In this example of juxtaposition, the author, or the photographer I should say, is making a contrast between two time periods, with the old photo representing an earlier time, while the background represents the present. This juxtaposition is made clear due to the fact that the lines in the photo are skillfully lined up with those of the background. Here I gathered two examples of juxtaposition from The Glass Castle. I'm going to read this quotation. You inane and foolish member of the female gender that hollered, "Get your godforsaken tuck-a-speck in the automobile." You make me Mr. Tough Guy, she screamed. Mom and Dad made up the next day, and by late afternoon, Mom was cutting Dad's hair. These two quotes put together Rex and Rose side by side to show more detail about their characters. First, the two have a huge fight and insult each other, but in the second quote that follows, they made up right away. This juxtaposition of seemingly contrasting events show how both characters are capable of forgiveness despite their differences. These quotes illustrate Rex and Rose's attitude towards life. And the second example is another one I found in The Glass Castle. It says, the hospital was clean and shiny, everything was white, everyone spoke in polite, calm voices. I wasn't used to the quiet and order, and I liked it. When my family came to visit, their laughing and singing and shouting echoed through the quiet halls. The quote places a contrast between the serenity of the clean and white hospital environment and the rambunctious behavior of the Walls family. The juxtaposition emphasizes the family's lack of order and messy home. When they arrive at the hospital and are told to keep quiet, they cannot help but to be loud. Lastly, let's examine two hypothetical examples of juxtaposition. So, as you may know, juxtaposition can not only be applied to literature, but also to art or photography. For my first example, I had to build off of an actual photo because it would be hard to illustrate juxtaposition without an image. This photograph perfectly demonstrates the contrast between wealth and poverty. On one side, you see there's a tennis court, a swimming pool, and a very fancy building, whereas on the other side, there's poverty and unsanitary conditions of the slum. I wanted to relay this idea first by word, but the picture of Sao Paulo served as an helpful example, so I used it to illustrate my hypothetical juxtaposition. You can pause the video here to read just for a second. In the paragraph I wrote here, I decided to juxtapose the warmth of a family and home with the harsh conditions of the homeless. The imagery develops contrast between two main elements, and the last sentence sums up the juxtaposition by describing the image to be jubilant but depressing.